Breach report number 13. Welcome back with
Lucky number
Josh.
13.
Yeah, right. A bit of a delay on this one. Things have been a little bit crazy lately, but we're rolling. This one's gonna be interesting too. I guess it's appropriate for being lucky number 13. So we've got a remote access Trojan that's actually run through a bot in Telegram. Uh, it's the Signal app developer actually fighting back against digital forensics, a ransomware gang extorting Apple, and some information on the major Pulse Secure VPN 0 day that came out in the last couple weeks. So quite a bit of developments on there.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the Telegram one. That one's kind of been emerging as just a platform, very convenient platform for threat actors.
For everybody too. I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. I use the platform myself. I mean, yeah, that's just my personal life, but it's a cool platform. It's got a lot of features. There's bots. There are emojis, all the typical stuff. So the bots in here are usually used for things like building polls or automating administrative things in your channels and whatnot. But as it turns out, you can use it for pretty much whatever you want. I mean, they're customizable, which is nice. So operators of a new remote access Trojan or RAT are utilizing that bot service as a command and control server or infrastructure for the remote access Trojan. So this means they're able to send commands to compromised computers from the actual Telegram app itself using the bot. So big thing here is targeting people using the Telegram platform. Now, it's not just against Telegram users, it's primarily against Windows PC users, but it's using Telegram as its platform. Telegram's been getting really popular. Um, they've got over 500 million monthly active users, which, as I understand it, is quite a bit.
Quite a bit indeed. I mean, I think when WhatsApp was really starting to scale and grow, 500 million monthly active users was a milestone for them. And I think a lot of the basis behind Telegram's growth is that it is decoupled from WhatsApp, which is Facebook, the parent company. And
Right,
people feel a little bit more safe and secure with the encryption and making sure that their data isn't being shared with third parties and manipulated. And I mean, that's the big concern, right? Because
right.
Facebook can just kind of wash their hands away from any liability. But people kind of
Well, I
flock
mean, you outright accept it. When you sign up for WhatsApp now, you sign up for the same data sharing policies that anything under Facebook has, which is
you,
you are a product, your data is their product, and so you're giving them their information willingly.
Yes, but there's also other situations where they will outright say they won't use your data, but they're not responsible for anyone who does choose
Sure.
to, who they partner with as a third party vendor. And that's how they get around all of that information.
What was that? The second or the fifth time Zuckerberg was in front of Senate?
Something like that, right?
I mean,
But
so many
I
times,
think
yeah.
it's really important to just kind of stress that popularity has been driven by this, decoupled from the
Yeah,
major tech. But now it's just kind of like you were saying, command and control server, gaining command and control with almost like a remote.
right. Well, and something that I honestly feel like everybody, not forgets, but just isn't always conscious of. Hackers are people too, right? So what's easy for everybody is also usually easy for them as well. So that's something to think about there. In terms of trends, right? It's just going to go where all the people are. That's it's your fishing pool, right? So speaking of this one, it does start with a phishing attack. So you have to actually let's hop over here to this article from Checkpoint Software Technologies. Skipping past this here. So this actually starts with your typical phishing email. You receive this lovely thing here that says you've got a protected document attached. And this document is protected to avoid sensible data leak. Sensible data leak, not sensitive, sensible. And
Now,
it
is
is
that's the
100%
actual
virus
email?
free. Yeah, this is what you get in the email. So
That
you click this and you get an executable file.
I
Yeah.
mean that's something that you report to HR, right? Just looking at it, you're like, did I win an award? What is going
Yeah.
on here?
Typically CorpSec, I think, right? So it depends on how your infrastructure is. Usually
It's
it's
so
CorpSec that
weird
takes
though
those.
that something like this would get through. Like
You
someone
know,
like
I know I feel like that all the time. I don't know if it's just we're more paranoid or what the deal is, but it works, man. People click this stuff. Hey, it's 100% virus free, guaranteed, right? So, you can trust us.
I guess it's law of numbers, right? If you're sending this out to 25 million people, eventually you're going to hit the one person who doesn't have a spam filter and is gullible enough to click on it.
Yeah, and it's more than just gullibility too. You also think about like not everybody can read the language as well. People may have different experiences, right? Like different cultures have different trust levels too. So some cultures could be, I don't want to say easier to scam, but manipulation's different when
Your
the
personality too comes
right
into
based on
play.
how well you trust things, right? So
Yeah.
like me, I'm not a very good victim because I don't trust anything. So I'm a
so
skeptic.
so that wouldn't work on you.
No. I mean, I'm most likely to download this just to put it in my sandbox and see what the heck they're sending me, for
Just to kind of
analysis.
deconstruct it, yeah.
Right. So here the attacker goes ahead. They build their Telegram account. They build this custom Telegram bot. You're given a token, which is down here, right? It's just a string, right? What you do is you hide that in the source code of a malicious executable file, send that in your 100% virus-free, sensible data coverage letter up here, and when somebody clicks on it, boom, they get this malicious executable, which actually contains um, the bot and the bot token. So with this bot token, you're then able to go to a Telegram channel, um, and your bot, see here you go, has been given a name, right? You hook it up using these uh, those IDs, right, and then information, and then you're presented with a menu here. So you know, if you had Pollbot, you go to Pollbot. It's like, here's how you start a poll. It's very much the same way. You type slash command at the bot in the chat, and it does the thing. So they've
Hmm.
programmed this bot where they type slash webcam to open the webcam. And look, you can even type which camera it is and how much of a delay you want before it opens. Anything you want.
That's really interesting. And I know like this, these chatbots have become really popular, especially in like Twitch. I think that's where a lot of it originated from, or at least kind of
Ah,
expanded
AOL,
upon.
man. That's the
Oh,
that.
okay, AOL. But I mean, like past, like
Yeah,
you're like actually performing functions like at this level.
sure.
Um, it's
It's
just
like
kind of
Slack, right?
yeah. It's really crazy to me to think that it's when you think about what a hacker might look like, not like a movie, but in real life, it's someone who's over a keyboard and maybe writing out lines of code. Where in this case, it's so simplified to the point of I want to do this. Okay, I'm going to monitor you. I'm just going to do slash monitor.
Right.
Like there's
Uh,
no thought in between it. Like maybe there's a lot of engineering that went into going creating that, but in terms
Definitely.
of like executing it in real time, it seems like giving that level of power just at your fingertips is it's a little scary.
Well, and keep in mind too that it's a business. So there's a bunch of businesses. I mean, it's an entire economy around malware because there are the people, who are deploying it, using it to steal stuff, right? And they're really like it's like the first line of attackers, right? They're the main ones who are doing stuff. They also carry all the risk, right? They're the ones who can get caught, sent to jail most easily. But that is a supply chain, right? Because those guys, if they didn't develop it themselves, they either purchased or borrowed or stole or whatever a framework or a software from somebody else who built that malware, who discovered the 0 day, right? So, you know, there's groups who all they do is research 0 days. They find vulnerabilities. They don't build any malware for it. They just find it and then they sell the vulnerability, right? They're like, here, we're selling 0 days, right? Somebody buys that, uses that to build a framework, then they sell those frameworks. You know, 10,000 people, 10,000 hackers want to use that new framework, so they pay whatever price for it, $100, $1,000, who knows how much they charge for these things, all over the place, right? Depending on how advanced and sophisticated they are.
It's a great gambit because
Yeah,
it's continuous. It will
right.
always be ever evolving.
Guaranteed customers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, yeah, like you said, what's a hacker? I mean, a hacker's a person. He's sitting back on his phone, right? Like, uh, I mean, I'm looking at this. If I were a hacker, this is
It's
great, dude. Like,
casual,
if
right?
I'm, maybe I'm, sitting down, taking a number two, scrolling Reddit, decrypting file systems, whatever I want, right? Make it easy on you. That's kind of the goal, right? It's not to be sitting down there pounding away on the keyboard. It's to get results
Right.
quickly and easily. And also, again, not everybody is a developer, so not everybody who's using this is going to know all that advanced stuff, right? And you could be somebody who's just like, hey, I'm just going to be
They just know what they want their end result to be.
right. So they just buy
Yeah.
this and use it. Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Script kiddie.
So if you're uh, if you suspect that you've been infected with this, right, what you're going to do on your Windows PC is search for users slash toxic guy slash rat.exe. Doesn't even try that hard to hide, but uh, I guess I just shouldn't be surprised anymore. I see everything. I see stuff that goes to such length to hide, from APTs. Then stuff like this. It's just like, what? Boom, we'll just send it
Just right
out
in your
and
face.
law of averages, right? So here's our next one, which is another encrypted application, Signal. Probably, I guess you could call them a competitor to Telegram. That do something very similar. I'd call this one a little bit more paranoid than Telegram, and doesn't have as much in terms of like bots and things built into it. But what's happening here is Moxie Marlinspike, the creator of the Signal messaging app, has actually weaponized Signal against digital forensics firm Cellebrite's tools. I don't even know what to call this, right? Like, this isn't really it's a breach. I mean, it's a breach of Cellebrite, but it's like a vigilante breach or something. I don't know what to call it. Very interesting. This. So Cellebrite is a company. It's an Israeli digital forensics company that helps governments break into people's devices, all kinds of devices,
Hmm.
mostly cell phones, but laptops, anything, especially encryption and not just break into it, but also to assist in the analysis. So they've got a framework that helps search and catalog and categorize all the data they find on these devices, helps it get into anything that's in there, right? Accounts, whatever. So if this has been seized in a criminal investigation and it's an encrypted phone, they would send this up to Cellebrite potentially, who could tear it apart and provide all that evidence to law enforcement.
Hmm.
This kind of information also has been abused across the world, to oppress certain groups and certain peoples around the world. So there's a lot of
Probably being used to
controversy around
blackmail people. I mean, there's so many different uses. I mean,
many
imagine.
things. Yeah,
I mean, a firm like this that has this capability, and this. There's a pretty well known one, Pegasus or something like that. I forget, but basically they're an Israeli security firm where they sell you access to like foreign dignitaries or high up level government officials. They sell you access to their iPhone, for example. $10 million will give you access to all the emails on this official's iPhone or something like that.
wow. Yeah, I mean, it's
There's
an economy, right? There's always something to sell with this. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so this one, so what they're doing here, there's quite a few interesting takeaways from this. I was kind of blown away by this whole story, and I know one of our recent acquaintances mentioned some more information about this, which hopefully we'll have him on next month to break some of this down. Um, let's see here. So what what they found is that two software packages provided by Cellebrite called UFED and Physical Analyzer. So these are two of the many software packages that are used. The UFED gets through encryption and passwords, file permissions, and it can also collect deleted or hidden data. So anything that's been zeroed out, it can potentially find. Um, and then they have physical analyzer, which uncovers what they call digital trace events, which are uh, rather than finding files themselves, it finds when you've deleted things, where files have moved to. So it's like additional information around these things. So as you can imagine, this is really useful stuff if you're trying to, you know, peel apart like a terrorist's phone, or if you're trying to get all the information you can on somebody to blackmail them, whatever it is you're
Dig up
trying to.
some dirt.
Right. So, I mean, we're hoping that Cellebrite is only ever involved in legitimate law enforcement purposes, but
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I mean, we know how these things are really going around the world,
You're
to say the
assuming that the
least.
law is legitimate.
Yeah. So, right, like I said, it's a very controversial. I mean, there's lots of people on different sides how they feel. So it's this whole thing is it's a little sensitive, and I wasn't sure how to feel about this anyway. But what they did was they found that Cellebrite's software, the UFED and the physical analyzer, had a lot of software vulnerabilities, and not just that it had a lot of vulnerabilities, but with what Moxie Marlinspike said was they were surprised to find very little care seems to have been taken with their industry standard exploit mitigation defenses, and many opportunities for exploitation are present. So it sounds like not only did they just have a few critical vulnerabilities, is they just maybe didn't even try or care.
Hmm.
Perhaps they didn't think that they'd ever be a target of this, or just I don't know, maybe no budget. But although I feel
Well,
like a company like this has got to not starve for budget. I
maybe
mean,
maybe it was intentional, or
I don't
maybe
know.
someone else is using them for their tool set, or maybe you. I mean, you have talked a lot about in the past the software development lifecycle and how security needs to be baked in, and how a lot of these organizations just aren't doing it because, partially because of revenues, but partially because you got to get that code out. You got to push that new feature
Right.
out. The shareholders are demanding that we need to keep up with user growth, or we need to keep up with whatever it is that we're trying to do with the platform. Where
Yeah, I'm
security is like,
banking more on that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a saying I like to say. Usually, it's around conspiracy theories, right? But it's um, be careful attributing to malice what can instead be attributed to negligence,
all right,
right? So
yeah.
could just be, yeah, we didn't focus on that. It just wasn't in the dev plan on the roadmap, whatever. Ultimately, it cost them though. So Signal's developer was able to build some code inside of Signal that when the phone was detected being accessed by one of these two software packages by Cellebrite, the I guess you could call it malicious code. Yeah, it's malicious code inside of Signal went to work actually obfuscating information and scrambling up digital forensics information. So getting rid of timestamps, changing timestamps, um, just altering events. So while it doesn't do anything like ultimately lock down their systems, what it's doing is it's completely compromising the integrity of that forensic data. So you can no
Hmm.
longer trust really any of it, right? You know that it's now been messed with, right? I mean,
I
that's
see. So it's kind of like a.
it's like
It,
OJ
it,
Simpson, man.
I was gonna say it kind of wipes your trails away, but I guess yeah, OJ Simpson it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily that it completely wipes out the evidence. It's just that it calls into question the integrity of it. It's no longer admissible. You can't use it because
Right,
it's
exactly right. You can't use it you can't prosecute against it.
right. So he said the exploit actually allowed him to execute any code, and a real exploit payload would likely seek to undetectably alter previous reports, compromise the integrity of future reports, perhaps at random, or exfiltrate data from the Cellebrite machine. Now that's an interesting one too, is the ability to actually exfiltrate. I don't I don't see any use for exfiltrating it if you're just doing it to fight back against digital forensics, but somebody might have a use for that.
Hmm.
It's just is it's kind of funny to me, honestly. It's like I said, I'm torn. On one hand, I'm like, cool. This is very punk rock, very rebel, fight the power against digital forensics. On the other hand, um, digital forensics are necessary though for um, law enforcement and for tracking
Well,
these
yeah, I mean,
things.
it
So
kind of
it's
calls into question all of that. I mean, that entire practice. If you
right.
can, you know, scramble things up like that, I mean, hopefully it's, in this case, it's pretty constrained. But I mean, how do you trust any of that information, like you were saying earlier? But I think somewhere else in the article, that it had explicitly mentioned that their security posture in general just wasn't up to par. So here you have a company that's dabbling in security who kind of gets hit by a supply chain attack.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, it's funny that he's all tongue in cheek about the whole thing too. He actually got a hold of some Cellebrite equipment, which allowed him to do some of this, right? And he says jokingly, in a truly unbelievable coincidence, he was walking in and saw a small package fall off a truck ahead of me, right? Full of the data. And this is also funny. So he wrote this in a post in a completely unrelated news. Upcoming versions of Signal will be periodically fetching files to place in app storage. These files are never used for anything inside Signal and never interact with Signal software or data, but they look nice, and aesthetics are important to software. Files will only be returned for accounts that have been active installs for some time already, and only probabilistically in low percentages based on phone number sharding. So what he's basically saying there is he's using the Signal platform to conduct this attack against Cellebrite in so many words, and so um, he goes into quite a bit of detail on his blog there. If you're interested, we can link that. But here's some of the equipment he came across, which this is really interesting. Check this out. It's all these different connectors.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, man, I don't even know what all this stuff is doing, but this is the type of stuff that they use. This is what I really thought was interesting though was vulnerabilities by year. So they've been tracking vulnerabilities in Cellebrite's software over quite a long time. So um, not really anything crazy. I know you asked me that before the show, as if it seems like a lot. It's not. I mean, really for any platform, it's kind of all over the place. But
Yeah, I mean, those seem probably pretty reasonable, right?
yeah,
If I were to guess, we had 20 incidents in 1 year. Oh, okay, we had 20 incidents. No, we had double the incidents. Oh, okay. Well, if it's only 47, we should probably look into it. But nothing to really like. These guys have been super negligent about their stuff.
right. Yeah, so to kind of put some background behind his nebulous little joke comments over here, what he says is uh, it's possible to execute arbitrary code on a Cellebrite machine by including a specially formatted but otherwise innocuous file in any app on a device that is subsequently plugged into Cellebrite and scanned. So when he's talking about these innocuous files that don't interact, this is what he's talking about. So it's if you have an active account, your account will get this file in its storage. It's an innocuous file, but its formatting is what actually allows the device to attack Cellebrite if they, confiscate your device and plug it into their network for some reason or into
Mm-hmm.
their scanning devices. So by including a specially formatted file on an app that is then scanned by Cellebrite, it's possible to execute code that modifies not just the Cellebrite report being created in that scan, but also all previous and future generated Cellebrite reports from
Hmm.
all previously scanned devices and all future scanned devices in any arbitrary way, inserting or removing text, email, photos, contacts, files, or other data with no detectable timestamp changes or checks and failures.
So you can swap evidence in and out for a
So
trial, for
potentially,
example.
if this is the apps in the worst case scenario, is Cellebrite picks up a phone with this, affected signal version. They plug it into their system to start doing digital forensics, and that, I mean, essentially logic bomb, I guess, is what you'd
Mm-hmm.
call that, goes off, and all of their digital forensics that they've done, past, present, and future, lose integrity.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that ends their business, so they have to fix
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like that's the thing. Like, I wouldn't even trust a company like that after something happening at this extent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Look at this. Apple Inc. has signed the MSI packages used by Cellebrite. So just so you know about data security and who's tied to them. Um, there you go.
Mm.
all the major companies, Microsoft, Apple, Google, they have deals like this with these companies. They're helping them sign their stuff. They help these companies. That's been a thing that's been
Some
kind of
third
talked about
party
for a while.
partnership. They
Yeah.
have just a digital signature server set up, and
Yep.
they just partner through them. Yeah.
Yep. So, uh, yeah, a lot of implications here for your privacy and digital security online.
I'm
Just a
just
very
worried
interesting
about
project.
being in a being accused of something, and Celebrate is, or a company like them is used to bring up evidence against me, and someone can just bloop, drop something in there that's completely fabricated, make it match the timestamp, and say, "Look, we have digital proof. How can you argue against the proof? It's got a digital signature."
So, like the reverse of what Moxie's doing, right? Is
Yeah,
rather than trying to scramble it to obfuscate, is plan. I mean, framing people. Yeah, that's what
yeah,
we're talking about. I mean, it's something that we know. We know some of our government agencies are capable of. Some of the declassified reports have things like that. I mean,
well, think about how easy it is from that perspective. Like, if you wanted to frame someone, you know, you'd have to go onto the site, put their fingerprint in there, or take hair samples, and, like, you know what I mean. In this, it's just so convenient. I can just say, okay, I'm going to take this fabricated video clip and drop it in here and say that this is the video footage of that night, and look, you're there.
why do you
You're
think
there. What are you
Edward Snowden moved out of America?
doing?
I can't remember. He was scared of something.
Scared of something, but I mean, this is
Yeah.
something that I think should be on a lot of people's radar.
I mean, we're already looking at deep fakes, right? I know that's kind
Mm,
of a buzzword, but it's something I'm scared of. I mean, it's worrying, right? Misinformation is extremely dangerous.
yeah,
It's really
people
bad. So,
acting before they have all the facts. Okay,
or incorrect
speaking
facts.
of Apple, we're
Hmm.
talking about the signature. There was something about their schematics, some IP gotten hacked or leaked.
Yeah. So this was actually about a week ago, right before their major spring-loaded event, which is, I guess, a huge announcement event for Apple. I don't know, Jason. You know anything more about that event?
Not an Apple person, no. Uh, Probably launching off some new product as they do, maybe.
Honestly, I'm surprised you're an Apple person. I would have pegged you for one,
Nope,
but
not. No, I have a phone. I mean, that's really about it.
yeah, I mean that's pretty common, yeah. So anyway, so Apple, they have these events. I mean, I guess it's one of their many product events. They have a lot of them. They were extorted. Well, there's an attempted extortion against them from the ransomware gang who operates the REvil or REvil ransomwares. So they were able to break into a company called Quanta Computer. It's a Taiwanese manufacturer of laptops. They manufacture hardware for Apple, Dell, HP, Alienware, Amazon, Cisco. There's a whole line here. BlackBerry, let's see,
Wow,
Siemens, Sony,
pretty
Toshiba,
much every
everybody.
major laptop provider in the world.
Pretty much. I don't see Samsung. They're the only ones who make their own stuff. So,
Uh-huh.
um, so pretty major breach of the supply line here, right? But they specifically targeted Apple and they said, look, Apple, we've breached Quanta. Here we've got the schematics, and these are not patents, which are generalized. These are down to the micrometer schematics
If
and
I want to make
material
an
schematics.
Apple Watch, an Apple MacBook Air,
I,
MacBook Pro, this is how I do it.
I could take this to a, less than legitimate manufacturer somewhere in the world and ask them to make this for me and have you know, essentially a MacBook Pro, probably
Yeah.
with some cheaper processes materials, but hey, it saves me money. And, really the goal there is reselling knockoffs, which is
Hmm.
always a huge devalue to the brand of anything. Like that's the nightmare, right? Like no knockoffs because it's
Well,
just
that's the brand value part is interesting, but I think more interesting is how these types of device companies make money, and even like computer chips and graphics cards too. The business model kind of operates the same way, where you know 10 years ago, people were always asking, well, why doesn't Apple have all of the cool features that Samsung has? Like waterproof, it took them forever to get that part.
right.
Or, changing up, an audio jack and like, making everyone upset about having to buy an attachment, like things like that. Well, the whole idea behind it is, and they even have it in these lease agreements now where it's like, trade in your phone every 2 years and get a new phone and just always continuously pay for a new upgrade. And what they'll do is they'll make the device marginally better. It doesn't do anything crazy, but the camera's a little bit better. The battery is a little bit better, but when you have a phone after 3 years, just the way the lithium ion batteries work, they degrade over time, they
Right.
don't last as long. So
It's
inherently
very
when you
incremental.
when you get a new phone, it's going to feel like it's got better battery life because the
Right.
one you had before couldn't last the day on half charge.
Well, and software is a big part of that. I don't know if you know that with the batteries, like those
Oh
lithium
yeah.
ion batteries have a specific control board and they have firmware and
Oh yeah,
the
dude. I mean, it gets as
quality
bad
of that
as,
matters
well, yeah. I mean,
quite a
it's
bit.
the token story. There is the whole the printers. What's the name of the HP printers, where it's like you don't have any black ink, we can't print. Well, I have blue and yellow ink. Use that. Nope, you don't have black ink. We can't print. You better buy a new cartridge.
Yep.
And it's all software driven. You could literally have ink in there, but because the software is saying you're at 25% and don't print, yeah, it's definitely the hardware and the software is tied in, and it all goes back to, hey, how can we get you
Talk
to
about
buy?
extortion.
Yeah, but it all goes back to how can we get you to buy more devices? How can we get you
Right.
to buy more cartridges? How can we get you to buy more and more and more? Because you could build a phone or a laptop, and if you take good care of it, 5 7 years. Well, that doesn't make Apple a $2 trillion company if their customers are buying every 5 to 7 years. They want them
Right.
buying every other year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen it with cars too. Everybody, it's always about buying the lease now, right? Don't buy a car, lease it, lease the car, right? So then you're always getting the new one, trading it in, upgrading. So I see this with everything. It's a subscription model. We're trying to get everything a subscription. So
Yeah, don't
I
own
almost feel like it's like
anything. You don't need
devices
to
as a
own
service.
anything.
Or no, own it outright. Don't pay for it forever.
You don't
Buy
need
the
to
thing,
own
have
anything, Josh. You can just pay us,
it.
and we'll
No.
we'll. It's convenient for you to just pay a little bit more, and you can rent it.
Yeah, so not financial advice, but if you hear the word credit, just think the word debt instead. Anyway, so kind of we got a little off on a tangent there, but so back to what's going on here with Apple. So this is potentially super damaging for them if these get sold, right? I mean, that's that's their main money. Apple really is their hardware. They don't really make money on anything else. Well, I don't know. I guess their cloud services and iTunes do now, but the
I mean,
hardware is the
most of their revenue is through
main
their
one.
phones,
Yeah.
so I mean,
So
their
these
watches
guys
do it
hacked
too.
into Quanta. They said, pay us money. They want a $50 million ransom, which is probably pretty small compared to the actual
Yeah.
worth of all the what's potentially been leaked here. They showed the screenshot to say that here's some of it, but we do have everything and potentially from these other manufacturers as well. And they threatened to post it up on the dark web. Now, there was some follow up to this. It took about a week, but the ransomware group has actually pulled down their previously leaked schematics and removed all references to the previous demands. Nobody knows why. There's no explanation, but it's gone. So it appears to be over. But I guess we can make our assumptions there, right?
Yeah, maybe they got paid off. Maybe they're just here it is, or maybe Apple found them. Maybe that's what it is. Apple's got some secret mercenaries, and they found them.
These guys been around a while, so yeah, I don't know. It's very curious.
Probably
Maybe
got
right.
paid
Maybe they
off.
did. You know what? They probably got paid off, and it was probably cyber insurance
Yeah,
policy that covered it. You know. Oh,
yeah, probably something very simple. But the implications that we were talking about, they're still there.
yeah. So, and then what about these other companies, right? So, what do we have here? HP, everybody else. So,
All
uh,
of them have been affected, and I
let's
mean,
say they get an insurance payday from all of them instead of the actual ransom they wanted. I mean,
yeah.
hey.
But to your point, like that's not. I mean, IP theft has been going on for forever. I
Mhm.
mean, since technology has become, the main catalyst for our growth and just prosperity, other nations look at that and they want it. And how can they do that? And yeah, I mean, this seems like a pretty cut and dry case of IP theft that, like you said, probably going to be used as a knockoff. And it is what it is. Happens.
Yeah. Hey, I'm sure some people will be happy about this. Looks like they're bringing back the MagSafe charger on the MacBook Pro. I know that was popular. I liked it.
Cool.
Thanks. Thanks, guys. At least we got that info out of it. All right, so here's a big one that's been going on in the last couple of weeks. Pulse Secure VPN Zero Day that came out. What we have from Bleeping Computer is a report that this VPN Zero Day has been actively exploited in defense firms and government organizations in both the United States and Europe. There is no specifics to which exact agencies are affected, but it's one of those pick one, right?
hmm
Pulse VPN is pretty popular. I've seen it in my time working in the DoD, so yeah, it's prevalent enough to be of concern. Let's put it that way, right? So this CVE is dangerous. It's a 10 out of 10 severity score. It's a group, really, of vulnerabilities that really give you complete control over a Pulse Secure VPN gateway. So now it's biggest thing here is they've patched this. There's also a workaround for it. So if you have Pulse Secure VPN and you haven't updated recently, please do so because this is a very serious threat. It's coming from Chinese backed state hackers, so UNC 2630, 2717, and potentially APT5 as identified by FireEye. Um, those don't mean anything to me off the top of my head, but I know those are. I've seen them. I'm pretty sure I've seen 2630 on one of our previous breach reports too. So these are APTs who've been around, made a name for themselves, been making noise.
Well, it's interesting. We've talked about it, and maybe this is just the trend. Um, Security software being exploited as a point of entry
Yeah,
into these other
SolarWinds.
organizations.
Yeah.
Exactly. SolarWinds is a good one. Um, and I don't know, like, how many more stories like this need to come out before people are like, okay, well, maybe I should do a full audit of everything that's connected to my systems. Maybe I should understand from that audit what these vendors are doing to secure their own environments and what level of access do they have into our environments and what are we allowing them, because a lot of the cases, you go through like a vendor selection process. You get the vendor, and it's usually an afterthought to say, well, wait a minute, how your API just connects? Like, hold on a minute, how does it connect? What is it doing? What methodology is it? Encrypted traffic? How where is that data stored? Who owns that data? Is that data compliant? Like, those are the types of things to think about when looking at attacks like this.
Hey, man, you got yourself a new career. I'll tell you what. That kind of stuff right there is what I was asking when working as doing third-party vendor assessments, right? What you're talking about is data flow diagrams, and what I was going to say is, if you're worried about this kind of stuff, what you're talking about is kind of the first steps towards zero trust. But I don't really want to talk about zero trust. That's really hard and complicated. Let's talk about something simple anybody can do right now today listening to this video is you go in tomorrow and you begin inventorying and classifying the data in your organization, right? And by classifying, I mean, is this public data where it gets doesn't matter who sees it? Is this financial data? Is this PII? Is this, classified as something like HIPAA, PCI? Is this IP, right? Like in terms of Apple's case, is this something we, the company, have built ourselves, our crown jewels, whatever it is, that which we design? Understanding the classification of this data. Very first step, right? Once you do that, very next thing to do is the data flow and build diagrams, make visual drawings if you have to, draw it on sticky notes or on I used to do it on a whiteboard, right? We were doing this to inventory and try to figure out where is our proprietary data going. I want to know every system that this thing touches and is stored on, right? So you build your data flow diagram, and what that does is allows you to visualize where you need to apply your security. If you've got extremely important stuff going across most of your network, you need to consider cutting that down, isolating it, separating it, right? This way, if your VPN that your typical everyday worker uses to sign in is compromised, it's not hooked up to the exact same systems which
Mm-hmm.
your blueprint development department is on, right? Um, I mean, that's ultimately the idea of zero trust in the end is trust nobody and only allow access for those who need it. But it has to start with what is the data classification and where is it going? Um, so if you're a victim of this false VPN 0-day exploit, and if you haven't done that exercise, chances are you've got all kinds of important data going through a now compromised VPN gateway. And you could have implemented a separate VPN for that data. You could have said no VPNs, right? Zero work, keep it stored only on a database, whatever it is. So VPNs. I mean, everybody knows this, right? Those are important. Everybody's getting a VPN these days. Those are very popular, even the at-home users using them, um, because it's meant to be your security tunnel, right? And so with
Mm-hmm.
that being compromised, it's pretty major. That's a huge breach.
Yeah, and there was maybe it's popular for VPNs to get targeted as well, just because of their reach. NordVPN was hit, and then there was another
Hmm.
popular one as well. I can't remember off the top of my head, but
Yeah, I can't think of it either.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember the Nord one. That was a few years back now. So here's the advisory they've released related to this. So SA 44784, an out of cycle advisory, meaning, we weren't expecting this. So they have a KB that refers to it. There's four CVEs: 2021-2289349 and oh, 893, 894, 899, and 900. These are super serious. So they allow multiple use after free, buffer overflows, command injection, and multiple unrestricted uploads. So what this is saying is you can inject commands, upload anything that you want through the gateway, and using buffer overflows and use after freeze, you can queue up and spill over commands potentially into other devices and anything that's on the wire through the gateway. So I mean that's complete control. Uh, you're able to do effectively whatever you want. You could sit there and man in the middle everyone on the network. You can alter DNS routes. You could send people to malicious servers. You could, you know, attach scripts, external scripts, whatever you want. Really, that's extremely serious.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, 10 out of
Yeah.
10. Yeah. Um, so there are updates available and in all these KBs you can go there. So check out your pulse. You need to today. And if you're interested in testing it out and just to kind of show that this is already, you know, this can already be compromised very easily, you can go on GitHub and check out Zephyrfish. That's Zephyrfish is GitHub, and they have CVE 2021-22893. It's a proof of concept attack for this. This one's kind of funny. What actually ends up happening is when you run it, it plays Rick Astley's "Never Gonna Give You Up." Well, it types it in
Rolls.
the
Oh
so
yeah, as
the
the
echo.
execution. Gotcha.
Right? Yeah, it just
Yeah.
echoes out messages to you, so it's pretty funny. Now, if you're not careful with it too, uh, you can don't screw up. You see that? That's a very powerful command right there. Don't delete your stuff. But this one I downloaded. I'm gonna play around with it. It's pretty interesting, but I do need to get a Pulse VPN set up in my lab. Uh, Very serious. I'm expecting to see some more news coming out of the.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask about that. What do you think? What are your thoughts about this down the road? Because I know when we tracked the Excellion breach, we kind of started to see some patterns emerge.
Took the
Um,
words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say, I was thinking this would track similar to Excellion and SolarWinds. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Maybe not quite as catastrophic. I don't know. Pulse is popular, man. A lot of big companies have it, and again, it is also affecting governments in the U.S. and Europe. So it's a supply chain attack. Again, it's the same
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. It's one of the things we've outlined in our trends report, and I think also, um, I think there was something in the news today actually that talked about Biden um, is getting ready to roll out his executive plan for cybersecurity.
Aha, yes.
So my guess will be probably getting back on track with CMMC, probably getting a little bit more strict on enforcing these guidelines and really just trying to tighten the loop on these supply chain attacks. I think that's going to be big focus of the administration, a big focus of anyone that does any business with the DoD, with the government in general. To be frank, if you're not doing your due diligence on your vendors, then you're not doing business with the government. And you know, we've said this before, but it has a trickle down effect where um, you're going to force people to comply and it's going to cost money and that
Hmm.
kind of sucks. But in essence, you're also helping to better secure everyone. So,
The
eh,
economic implications are very interesting. On both sides of it it's going to be expensive for everyone to protect themselves properly, but it's also really expensive not to.
yeah.
It sucks, really. I mean, to have to make that decision. Think about that. It's like it's do we definitely spend money? Do we possibly lose even more money? And it sounds. I mean, it sounds a little dramatic, but I mean, it really is. It can be that bad. I mean, we've seen companies, even in our breach report, who have suffered millions of dollars of damage, who can't manufacture, who can't do business, and those
Hmm.
who, like SolarWinds, have and will continue to lose business based on the damage done to that brand because they were hacked.
Yep.
Um, but what? I think there's far-reaching implications. Maybe let's chat about that real quick. I know we're
Sure.
pretty much about to wrap up, but I'm just kind of thinking about in the future. We talked about big cybersecurity budgets, but it's true. We're going to have to get bigger budgets. There's going to also have to be more more budgeting for auditing and for compliance and for all the different aspects of it in addition to the software. And then there's the people, and the people have to be paid appropriately to keep on top of this, to understand how to use it. There's so many different cybersecurity jobs today. I can remember, and you can remember when things got booming, uh, and then when cybersecurity first became a thing, it was very few jobs, and nowadays there's just an abundance of different types of cybersecurity jobs, right? Threat hunters and researchers and analysts and people who do everything, pen
Hmm.
testers, right? So, I mean, how big does this chunk of the economy need to grow to really be steadfast against the growing threat? Because I
Well,
think right now it's we're a
here's
little
the
bit
thing.
on the losing
Here's
side.
the thing. Here's the thing. One, it's almost all of it is technology driven. Almost
Right.
all of it. And technology moves at the speed of light. And these organizations, they need to take time to budget things out, to roll things out, to actually invest in all of these things, which they are. And the reason why I know they are is there's a trend report somewhere floating around that said somewhere around 10% was the increase in cybersecurity investment that was planned for this year. On top of in 2020, there was already an increase in technology in general with work from home culture. So it kind of trickled down. And to get to your point about what are the implications, I've been saying this for probably about 2 years now. It's going to be a normal cost of doing business. People are going to start evaluating their vendors, their partnerships, and they're going to be saying, okay, well, you know, what data do you have access to of ours? How are you sending and receiving that information? What's your API connection setup look like? How is that data, what level of access, like we were talking about before?
Right.
And if you don't meet some level of, I don't know if it's a checklist or, vendor assessment or typically
Compliance of some form, yeah.
compliance, yeah, which that you talked about cost, right? And these positions where a CISO is becoming more and more of a top level figure in organizations where, compliance, that's a whole different realm of security outside of doing the assessments, outside of doing the implementation of the work and maintaining the program, depending on how large you are. So, yeah, broad
Giant industry.
broad strokes, my feeling is the industry is only going to continue to grow.
Yeah.
Investments have to continue to, because if you want to do business in this day and age, you have to be online. And if you are online in any fashion, you are
You have to be
susceptible
secure.
to an attack. Yeah, you
You
are.
know, and you mentioned something, and I'm kind of curious. I don't know if you know this, but let's say a 10%, right? 10% investment, 10% increase in your budget towards cybersecurity was something that they projected, right? For let's say for 2021, but we've seen cybercrime go up over 600%.
Hmm.
So how does a 10% budgetary increase compare against a 600% increase in cybercrime, right? Like, because it's not a one to one. I know that because the tools on the blue team side could be extremely effective against the red team. So um, maybe spending less can do more, but I'm wondering, what is that ratio, right? Like, I don't think a 10% budgetary increase was enough this year. I mean, look at everybody who got hacked. And I know that's kind of
Yeah.
an arbitrary number, but just for example, that's the kind of stuff I'm thinking about. So, I mean, if you have to double your cybersecurity or IT security workforce,
I think
that's
it's less. I think that the spend is less relevant in how you actually apply the spend.
yeah,
And I think there's two ways to kind of look at it. The first way is, unfortunately, the way that people go, and it's the wrong way, is let's invest in all this technology and spend the money, and there we go, we check the box,
right.
right?
Then there's the purple
Well,
segue.
hold on. Yeah, there's the purple segue. Yeah, the plug. And then the second bit is, see, I lost my thought when you did
I'm so
that.
sorry.
Um, Spend a lot of money on the technology. They hope that it works, and it's inevitably
Right.
going to fail because we've got the sim tool and we're ingesting all this stuff. But the more proper way is to stop thinking about security as these one-offs of, I got to do an annual risk assessment, or I've got to do my pen test once a quarter, or I got to do. Stop thinking of it as individual components that you have to do, and start thinking about it from a program development perspective
Yep.
of like any other function of business. You would develop a program around it. You would hire a department head who would then, build out, request resources, whether there's some tooling. But I think the biggest deficit are in the trained professionals. And I know for a fact that the deficit, um, I think by 2030 is going to be somewhere around 3.5 million cybersecurity professionals. But it's not the entry level professionals. It's not the people who can just, click a tool and run a tool and report on a tool. It's the senior level people and the executive level people who can actually build and run these programs. That's where the big deficit is on the compliance side, on the blue team side, on the red team side, on all of these angles. That's where the big deficit is, and that's where I think the greatest risk is.
Yeah, man, I think you really said it all there. Is what I think you're trying to say before I very rudely interrupted you is that where companies make the mistake is that they treat it as a numbers game, right? So they throw more software, more tools, bigger tools, better tools, and maybe sometimes more people, even more bodies at the problem. Whereas what what you really need to do is look at it, as you said, from a program perspective, but it needs to be goals driven, right? And risk driven. So if you have bought all these, big time expensive security tools and you've hired your guys and you've got you've got your sim engineers and all these dudes who have now taken up a large part of your budget, um, and then you still don't have a very effective cybersecurity program because you haven't also done things like done your data flow diagrams, found out what your data classifications are. Simplification is extremely valuable in security.
Hmm.
It's something that always gets overlooked. It's the administrative overhead, and it is a part of the controls. I mean, there's a reason why control sets like CIS tell you to reduce the number of accounts that your administrators have to administer. And
Hmm.
it's not just a, it's not just about the access, right? Like one, least amount of access is great, but also those are human beings who have to sit there and take care of that security. And if you make that job hard on them,
Hmm.
they're going to make mistakes. I mean, that's just how
Or they're
that
going to get
happens.
bogged down with
Right.
busy work, and they're not going to be able to spend time thinking about the
Yes.
strategy. And that's the biggest deficit is we have the implementation bit, we have the checkbox checked, for compliance. But what does next year look like? What does year 2, year 3 look like? What are you building towards?
Yeah.
Security doesn't sleep, and just because you're logging things and you if you're lucky, you have someone who's actually analyzing the logs, but in most case you're just logging, monitoring and reporting on it. You're not really doing anything else.
Yeah, and I think if you're not actively building towards something, some kind of security program, you're working towards burnout with your
Hmm.
security team because
Oh yeah.
the bad guys are working towards building something. So what's going to happen is eventually you're going to fall behind, and then you're going to have to make one of those decisions of, well, do we hire some more security engineers, or maybe we swap out this WAF for a different WAF or a different SIM, right? And those are
Hmm.
uh, th- honestly, those are decisions you shouldn't have to be. That's a dumb conversation. That's a waste of time. You already bought the software. You've got the tool, and the tool works. If your program's not working, it's because you need to focus on the process side of your PPT triangle, right? You've got the tools, you've got the people. Make your processes work so that you're staying fresh, staying ahead of things, that you're not burning people out, and sometimes maybe you do just need to hire more people. I mean, I've worked at some places where I was just like, how do you get by with so few IT security people for the like just thousands of people who work here? So,
Sadly, it's kind of the culture of our time, especially in the IT industry. People just
yeah.
kind of get abused and kind of bogged down. But anyways, I think that this was a great um, breach to kind of end this on. Lots of really great discussions, kind of branching out from that. Josh, as always, thanks for taking the time to dive through and dissect all of these stories. Really do enjoy going through them with you.
Absolutely. Now that we're on number 13, we talked about the future of the show a little bit, and I think we do want to see some cool improvements coming. So maybe we'll wrap this up. We'll call it like a season one, and we'll come back with some more technology, some more guests, and maybe a better flow to the program itself. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, we have a lot of really good plans in the pipe. some experts that we want to bring on who can really provide much more depth to the conversation. We have some people that were talking in cryptography, some malware researchers, some threat researchers. So
Basically,
all
people who actually know what they're talking about, not just me.
yeah, but we want to give a little bit more depth to the conversation and
Yeah,
really pick apart like the Pulse Secure. Like, can we pick that malware apart and really take a look at
get some
or the
demos going.
vulnerability rather, and take a look at exactly a demo of it. So yeah, more to come.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. So, well, there's our lucky number 13 we'll sign off with, and we'll return soon with some good stuff.